Hey everyone, my name is Amani. That Christmas Eve I walked out of the house I grew up in with a single suitcase in my hand, the cold biting through the only coat I had, and the snow crunching under my boots like it was mocking me. My parents didn't even glance at me as they closed the massive front doors behind me, and my older sister, Zara, stood in the doorway smirking as if she had won some twisted lottery. "Good luck surviving on your own," she said, her tone sweet like poison. I couldn't even respond, my teeth chattering as I dragged that suitcase through the icy fog that had settled over the neighborhood. No money, no car, no home to return to. Everything my family had told me I deserved, everything I thought was mine, had vanished in a single signature on a trust amendment, leaving me erased invisible in the eyes of the people who were supposed to love me most. I stumbled into a small park nearby, shivering so hard that my hands felt frozen before they even touched the bench I collapsed onto. It was there, in that moment of total despair, that she appeared. An elderly woman, barefoot, her skin pale and almost translucent in the streetlight, her silver hair whipping around her face in the winter wind. She looked like she had been walking through the cold for hours. I wanted to look away, to curl up and pretend I wasn't there, but something about the way she held herself stopped me. She asked if I knew of any shelters still open, her voice raspy from the cold, and I felt a strange kinship with her because I didn't have a place either. Without thinking, I took off my coat and draped it over her shoulders. She looked at me, eyes wide and piercing, and whispered, "Kindness like yours is rarer than any wealth." Then she walked away, disappearing into the mist. I sat there, numb and shaking, wondering if I had imagined the encounter, when my phone buzzed with notifications from job sites, emails, and messages I didn't have the energy to open. I felt completely alone, abandoned by the only family I had ever known. My parents had rewritten the rules. My sister had sided with them, and I had nothing. I wandered through the quiet streets, the luxurious houses glowing behind frosted windows, the laughter and light spilling out into the cold, and realized that I truly didn't belong anywhere. For the first time in my life, I was free of expectations, but that freedom came wrapped in loneliness and despair. I kept walking, following the faint glow of street lamps until I found myself back at a small church garden where a bench offered a moment of rest. I sank onto it, hugged my knees, and let the tears come for the little girl who'd always tried to do the right thing. For every birthday and Christmas that my sister outshone me, for every time I believed that hard work and obedience would earn my family's love. And as I cried, I realized something crucial. I wasn't disposable because I had failed. I was disposable because I wasn't Zara. The weight of that truth crushed me. Then she returned. The same barefoot woman from earlier, staggering slightly, shivering, asking again about shelters. My own despair was mirrored in her exhausted frame, and without hesitation, I stood and offered her my coat again. Her hands, thin and trembling, clasped mine, and she whispered my name softly, like it was something precious she had been searching for. That single act of selflessness, giving away the only thing keeping me warm, changed something in me, shifted something invisible but profound. Hours passed, and I finally made my way to a cheap motel, eating vending machine snacks and applying for every job I could find that might pay rent and keep me afloat. It was exhausting, demoralizing, and terrifying, but I held on to the memory of her eyes, the way she had trusted me with her vulnerability, and I kept going. Days later, the phone rang. A woman introduced herself as Claudia, saying she was calling on behalf of someone named Madame Odora St. Clair, who wanted to meet me immediately. I laughed because it sounded impossible, a prank even. But when I looked through the peephole, I saw 19 identical black luxury cars lined up outside. I didn't know what to think, but instinctively, I grabbed my keys and stepped out, wearing the same hoodie and jeans I had slept in for 2 nights. She was waiting in the middle car, flawless, elegant, the same woman from the park, but transformed into someone commanding, regal, untouchable. She spoke softly, like a friend, like someone who had been watching, and said, "Amani, I've been waiting for you." And just like that, my life began to change. Before I go further, I want to ask you, the person listening right now, who are you? And where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It helps me bring more stories like this to you. Now, back to my story. Madame St. Clair explained that she had been walking through the city every Christmas Eve for decades, searching for someone who still had a heart when no one was watching. Most years, she found disappointment, but this year, she found me. She had been observing everything I did after that night on the bench. Every step I took to survive without giving up. Every act of selflessness, no matter how small. And she decided I was exactly the person she had been looking for. She offered me a chance to work alongside her, to learn, to grow, to eventually run the foundation she had built, not as a gift, but as a responsibility. I was speechless. The idea that my smallest act of kindness could lead to this was almost too much to comprehend. She told me I would face the hardest months of my life learning to make a real difference managing millions, working with people who had lost everything and making sure no one ever had to feel the helplessness I had felt that night. And so I began. The days were brutal. 6 in the morning runs, long meetings with donors and executives, late nights reviewing grant applications, site visits to shelters, and listening to stories of people whose lives had been torn apart. I learned to measure impact, not intention. I learned that giving someone a hand wasn't just charity, it was empowerment. Every night I collapsed into bed, exhausted, my body aching, my mind spinning with numbers, reports, and human suffering. And yet, through it all, I never stopped thinking about that night on the frozen bench and the barefoot woman who had believed in me. She had reminded me that character mattered more than comfort, and that lesson became the core of everything I did in the months that followed. By June, I was no longer the frightened woman with a single suitcase. I had transformed, not just in skill, but in confidence, in knowing that I could survive and thrive on my own terms. Madame St. Clair handed me an official contract, naming me president and CEO of her foundation, giving me full authority to direct its millions of dollars, to make decisions that would affect thousands of lives. I was overwhelmed, stunned into silence, unable to fathom how far I had come from the girl standing in the snow. She looked at me and said softly, "I didn't bring you here because you gave away a coat. I brought you here because I never once saw you give up, because you always chose the right thing when it would have been easier to think only of yourself." That moment crystallized everything I had endured, every sleepless night, every tear, every pang of doubt. I realized I had been fighting for something greater than survival. I had been fighting for purpose, for justice, and for a chance to ensure that no one else would ever feel disposable again. Then came the call I never expected. My parents, my sister, those who had erased me, were facing ruin. Investments gone wrong, debts they couldn't repay, the life they had built on my exclusion crumbling before their eyes. They came to me, pleading for help, and I listened quietly, weighing my choices. My heart wanted to shake with anger, to take revenge for everything, but I had learned the lesson the barefoot woman had taught me. Justice is not vengeance. I handed them guidance, access to financial planners, support programs, resources for emotional and practical recovery, the same way I would help any stranger who had fallen through the cracks. I refused to bail them out or give them an unfair advantage, because fairness mattered more than family loyalty when loyalty had once been betrayal. I watched as the public caught wind of their collapse, as social media recounted their extravagance and mistakes, and felt no satisfaction in their humiliation, only clarity that I had set boundaries and upheld integrity. Meanwhile, my work with the foundation expanded. I opened a housing initiative for families who had nowhere else to turn, schools and medical centers for children who had never felt safe, programs that gave people the tools to rebuild their lives. I attended ribbon-cutting ceremonies, listened to stories of those I had helped, and for the first time felt that my efforts were creating real, tangible change. One afternoon, my parents and sister appeared at one of these events, silent, watching as hundreds of families celebrated the opportunities they would never have had without the foundation. I didn't smile. I didn't look away. I simply acknowledged their presence and continued forward, showing by example what it meant to live with purpose and integrity. The moment I stepped back inside the building, the warmth, the laughter, and the hope surrounding me felt different from anything I had experienced before. I understood fully that forgiveness did not require reopening the door that had once hurt me. It required walking through a new door, one I had built myself. And as I bent down to speak to a little boy offering me a dandelion, I realized that this was the life I had fought for, the path I had earned through hardship, empathy, and resilience. For the first time in years, I smiled and meant it, knowing that true family, true connection, and real justice come not from blood, but from courage, heart, and the choices we make when no one is watching. That is the story of how I went from being erased to becoming someone who could make a difference for thousands. And all because I chose kindness when it mattered most. If you've been inspired by this story, or felt your own struggles reflected here, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It helps me share more stories like this and brings hope to people who need to hear that they are not disposable. They are not alone, and that every moment of courage can change a life.